At the prestigious Galactic Military Academy on Zentari Prime, 4 alien students worked quietly in the dark hours when most others slept. The massive library tower stretched high above them, filled with the military knowledge of dozens of starfaring civilizations. Kiko moved carefully through the shadows between the data terminals. Her tall insect-like body bent over the security panel, and her large compound eyes reflected the soft glow of the screen. Her sharp mandibles clicked softly as she worked to break through the electronic locks. She had always been good with technology, even the forbidden kind. Beside her, Nara floated slightly above the ground. Her body was almost see-through, like looking through colored glass. Waves of psychic energy moved around her as she reached out with her mind, searching for any guards who might catch them. Her species could read thoughts and feel emotions from far away, making her the perfect lookout. "Are you sure we should do this?" Juno whispered nervously. His body looked like it was made of living crystal, and the dim lights of the archive made pretty rainbow colors dance across his surface. His people were known for being very smart and able to process huge amounts of information quickly. But right now, even his powerful mind felt worried about what they were doing. Miko swam slowly in her special suit filled with salt water. She needed the water to breathe and move properly. Her blue-green skin had small scales, and her fingers were webbed like a fish. She was working on another computer terminal, her webbed hands moving fast across the controls. "The security codes are very complex," she said quietly. "But I have seen patterns like this before in the deep archives." The 4 students had met while working on their final project about old fighting styles that were no longer used. They were supposed to write about how different alien races used to fight wars in the past. But 3 days ago they had found something that was not supposed to be found. While searching through old military records, Kiko had discovered a reference to a restricted data vault. The vault was marked with a symbol none of them recognized and labeled Species 347b, Quarantine Protocol Eternal. The word eternal had made them all very curious. What could be so dangerous that it needed to be locked away forever? They had spent 2 days planning how to get inside. Nara used her psychic abilities to map out the guard schedules. Juno calculated the best time when the security systems would be weakest. Miko found the backup access codes in some very old files. And Kiko figured out how to disable the alarms without triggering any warnings. "Almost there," Kiko clicked softly. Her mandibles moved in the special pattern her people used when they were concentrating hard. "The final lock is there." The massive vault doors began to slide open with a deep hissing sound. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it the smell of old metal and something else they could not identify. Inside they could see rows and rows of data crystals, each one glowing with a strange red light. "By the 7 moons," Miko whispered in amazement. "How much information is stored in here?" Nara's psychic senses were immediately overwhelmed. "There are emotions trapped in these files," she said, her voice shaking. "Very old emotions. Fear, anger, and something else I cannot understand." They moved carefully into the vault. The walls were covered with storage units, and each one was labeled with numbers and codes they did not recognize. Juno approached the nearest data crystal and connected it to his portable reader. The first file they opened contained video footage that made no sense to any of them. They watched bipedal creatures that looked somewhat like some of the races they knew but different. These beings wore primitive armor made of metal plates and carried weapons that shot small metal projectiles instead of energy beams. In the video, these primitive creatures were fighting against soldiers with advanced plasma weapons and energy shields. The advanced soldiers should have won easily. Their technology was clearly superior. But somehow, the primitive beings were not just surviving, they were winning. "This cannot be real," Juno said, his crystal body flickering with confusion as he processed the data. "Those old projectile weapons should not be able to penetrate modern energy shielding. The physics do not work." But the timestamp on the video was clear. 847 galactic standard cycles ago. The header at the top of the file read simply, "First Contact War Terra System." Kiko accessed another file. This one showed maps of a small star system with one main star and several planets. The third planet from the star was marked with flashing red warnings. "Look at this," she said. "The system is labeled as Species Origin Point, Extreme Caution Required." Miko swam closer to read over her shoulder. "Terra System," she read aloud. "Population of Species 347, be estimated at 7 billion individuals. Technological level, pre-interstellar. Threat assessment, maximum." "Maximum threat?" Nara asked, her psychic form shimmering with disbelief. "But they appear to be primitives. How can primitives be rated as maximum threat?" They opened more files and each one made less sense than the last. There were reports of battles where these humans, that seemed to be what Species 347b called themselves, used tactics that no civilized species would ever consider. They fought without following any rules of war. They used tricks and lies and attacked when enemies did not expect it. One report talked about humans using their own mining equipment as weapons. Another described how they turned their space rockets into bombs. A third file showed humans fighting for days without rest, continuing to battle even when they were badly wounded. There must be some mistake, Juno said, but his voice sounded uncertain. No species could survive fighting like this. It goes against every natural instinct for self-preservation. But as they continued reading, they realized that everything in the files pointed to the same impossible conclusion. Somehow, these primitive humans had not just survived first contact with advanced galactic civilization, they had fought it to a standstill. And that was only the beginning of what they would discover in the Forbidden Archives. The four students moved deeper into the Forbidden Vault, their curiosity growing stronger with each file they discovered. The red glow from the data crystals cast strange shadows on their faces as they uncovered more secrets about the mysterious Species 347b. Nara floated closer to a large collection of files marked Terran Integration Wars. As soon as her psychic abilities touched the data, she jerked back as if she had been burned. There are terrible emotions stored in these files, she whispered. Pain, fear, and something else, something like madness. Miko swam over to help her friend. What do you mean? What kind of emotions? Not just from one side, Nara explained, her translucent form shaking. The emotions come from both the humans and our people. But the human emotions are different. They feel wrong somehow. Juno connected several data crystals to his processing unit and began reading through the military reports. According to these files, first contact with the humans went exactly as planned in the beginning, he said. The initial diplomatic missions were successful. The humans seemed like a typical primitive species. Kiko pulled up the original assessment reports on her screen. Look at this. When the galactic powers first found the Terra system, they thought it would be easy to integrate the humans into galactic civilization. The humans had barely learned how to travel between planets. Their weapons were simple metal projectiles and basic nuclear bombs. 3 major galactic powers decided to claim human territory, Miko read from another file. The Hegemony, the Collective, and the Star Federation. Each one thought they could easily control the humans and use their planet's resources. The students found detailed invasion plans that showed how confident the alien forces had been. The Hegemony expected to control human space within 2 galactic cycles with only minimal fighting. The Collective believed they would have less than 1,000 casualties total. The Star Federation had already planned how to divide human territory between them. But something went very wrong, Juno said as he processed more data. His crystal body began to glow brighter as he read faster. The humans did not fight the way anyone expected them to fight. The battle reports painted a picture that none of the students could understand. The humans had taken their primitive technology and used it in ways that no civilized species would ever think to do. They ignored all the normal rules of warfare that every galactic civilization followed. This report says the humans used psychology as a weapon, Kiko read with confusion. They would leave messages for enemy soldiers designed to make them afraid or angry. They would play loud music during battles to confuse their opponents. Some human units would pretend to be dead and then attack when enemies came close. Miko found a file that made her scales turn pale. Here it says that human forces converted their mining equipment into weapons. They took machines designed to dig tunnels and turned them into devices that could destroy starships. They used construction robots as soldiers. That is not the worst part, Juno said, his voice getting quieter. Combat Report 847-332 describes how humans took their own space rockets, the ones they used for exploration, and turned them into delivery systems for nuclear weapons. They would launch these rockets at enemy ships and detonate them. Nara tried to read one particular file but had to stop. I cannot process this one. The emotional content is too strong. It describes something called mutually assured destruction. The humans told the galactic forces that if they could not win the war, they would make sure everyone lost by destroying everything. The students sat in shocked silence for a moment. In all their studies of galactic history, they had never heard of any species threatening to destroy everything rather than surrender. Most civilized races would negotiate or accept defeat before causing such massive destruction. Look at this report from Admiral Vex Tai, Kiko said, pointing to a file marked with the highest security classification. He was the commander of the Hegemony's 5th Fleet. Listen to what he wrote after fighting the humans for 6 months. She read the report aloud. These beings fight as if death means nothing to them, yet they treat the loss of a single individual as if it threatened their entire species. We cannot understand this contradiction. They will sacrifice thousands of their own people to complete a mission, but they will also risk everything to save one injured soldier. Their behavior follows no logical pattern that our strategists can predict. Juno processed dozens of other reports from different commanders. Every single military leader says the same thing. The humans adapt their fighting style faster than should be possible. In one battle they would use simple tactics. In the next battle, they would use completely new strategies that countered everything the galactic forces had learned to expect. Here is something even stranger, Miko said, reading from her floating display. The humans somehow got better at fighting the longer the war continued. Most species get weaker and less organized during long conflicts, but the humans became more dangerous over time. One phrase appeared over and over in the military reports: impossible tactical adaptability under extreme stress. The galactic commanders could not understand how a primitive species could change their fighting methods so quickly and effectively. Nara finally managed to process some of the emotional content from the files. The fear in these reports is not just from losing battles, she said. The galactic forces were afraid because they realized they were not fighting a normal war. They were fighting against a species that seemed to become more dangerous the more desperate they became. The students realized they had only scratched the surface of the human mystery. The files showed that the integration wars had lasted much longer than anyone had expected and had ended in a way that no one could have predicted. The 4 students had been reading files for hours, but what they discovered next made their previous findings seem almost normal. Deep in the archive, they found a collection of files marked with black warning symbols and the title, Terra Siege Final Solution Protocol. Kiko's compound eyes widened as she opened the first file. This says that 6 different galactic powers joined together to end the human problem once and for all, she said. They decided to use orbital bombardment to destroy human cities from space. Miko swam closer to read over her shoulder. 6 powers? That has never happened before. Different galactic civilizations almost never worked together like that. The humans had been fighting for 3 years, Juno processed from another data crystal. The galactic forces thought that if they attacked from space with overwhelming firepower, the humans would have to surrender. They believed no primitive species could survive having their cities destroyed from orbit. Nara tried to read the emotional content from the files, but immediately pulled back. The fear in these records is much stronger than before, she said, her translucent form flickering. Whatever happened during this siege, it terrified our people. The students began watching video footage from the Terra siege, and what they saw made no sense according to everything they had learned about biology and warfare. The videos showed human soldiers continuing to fight even when they should have been dead from their injuries. Miko, look at these medical readings, Kiko said, pointing to streams of data flowing across her screen. Are these numbers correct? The aquatic student checked her instruments 3 times before answering. If these readings are accurate, then these humans were experiencing biological changes that should have killed them instantly. Their heart rates were 300% higher than what any known species can survive. The levels of combat chemicals in their blood should have shut down their entire nervous system. In the videos, they watched human soldiers with terrible wounds continuing to fight as if nothing had happened to them. Some humans had lost limbs but kept using their weapons. Others had injuries that would have immediately killed any other species, yet they continued giving orders to their troops. This is impossible, Juno said, his crystal body flickering with confusion as he processed the data. No biological system can function under these conditions. These humans should have died from the stress alone. But the most disturbing part was not just that the humans survived impossible injuries. The videos showed them doing something that made even the alien commanders sick with horror. When human soldiers died in battle, their living comrades would use the bodies as part of their defensive positions. Nara watched one video and immediately had to look away. They are using their own dead as shields and weapons, she whispered. They position the bodies to create psychological fear in attacking forces. No civilized species would ever do such a thing. The psychological effect on the galactic forces was immediate and devastating. Alien soldiers who had fought bravely in dozens of wars began refusing to attack human positions. Some units reported complete mental breakdowns after seeing human defensive tactics. The galactic commanders could not understand what they were fighting, Miko read from a military report. They thought they were fighting a primitive species, but the humans were acting like nothing they had ever encountered before. Nara tried again to read the emotional content from the siege files, but the mental state she sensed from the humans was completely alien to her. "There is something wrong with their minds during combat," she said. "It is as if they enter a mental condition where they stop caring about their own survival. But it is not madness, it is something else entirely." The strangest part was that as the siege continued and the human situation became more hopeless, their fighting effectiveness actually increased. This contradicted every known law of biology and psychology that the students had ever learned. "Look at these combat efficiency ratings," Juno said, his voice filled with disbelief. During the first week of the siege, human resistance was at 67% effectiveness. By the third week, when half their cities had been destroyed, their effectiveness had increased to 134%. When they were down to their last few strongholds, they were fighting at 200% effectiveness. "That is impossible," Kiko clicked in confusion. "All species become less effective as they take casualties and lose resources. No biological system becomes stronger when it is closer to destruction." The most chilling file came from General Korthak, the commander of the largest galactic fleet ever assembled. His final transmission before ordering a complete retreat was brief but terrifying. Miko read it aloud. "We are not fighting a species that fears death. We are fighting beings who treat impossible odds as merely another problem to solve. My recommendation is immediate withdrawal from all human territories. These creatures possess something we cannot measure or understand. Continuing this siege will result in the destruction of our forces, not from human weapons, but from the psychological damage to our own troops." The students discovered that after the Terra siege, Galactic Command had created a new classification for the humans. They called it Berserker Protocol, a theoretical combat state where biological limitations were somehow ignored through pure determination and willpower. According to these files, Juno processed slowly, humans can enter a mental state where they stop feeling pain, ignore fatal injuries, and continue fighting long past the point where their bodies should have stopped functioning. The galactic scientists could not explain how this was possible. The siege had lasted 4 months. In the end, it was not the humans who surrendered, it was the 6 galactic powers who withdrew their fleets and never returned to human space. The humans had won through sheer refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat seemed certain. The 4 students thought they had seen the worst of what humans could do, but they were wrong. In the deepest part of the Forbidden Archives, they found files marked with the highest security classification in galactic history. The warning symbols were so severe that even accessing the files should have triggered immediate arrest. "These files are marked galaxy-wide security level. Absolute," Kiko said, her insect-like form trembling as she read the warnings. "Only the highest commanders in galactic history have been allowed to see this information." Miko floated closer, her aquatic form moving nervously in her suit. "Maybe we should stop here. We have already learned more than we should know." But Nara's psychic curiosity was too strong. "There is something in these files that feels different from the others. The emotional content is not just fear, it is pure terror." Juno processed the security locks on the files. "The encryption is unlike anything I have ever seen. It will take all of my processing power to break through." It took them 2 hours to access the first file, and when they did, what they found made everything else seem small by comparison. The file was titled Pyrrhus Doctrine Final Human Strategic Response. "This cannot be real," Miko whispered, her scales turning pale as she read the document. "According to this, the humans converted their entire star system into a weapon?" The students read in growing horror as the files revealed humanity's ultimate strategy. When it became clear that the Galactic Coalition was going to defeat them no matter what they did, the humans had not tried to negotiate or surrender. Instead, they had done something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted. Working in secret for over a year, human engineers had converted their gas giant planets into massive fusion bombs. They had turned their asteroid belts into platforms that could launch rocks at incredible speeds. Their outer space colonies had been converted into automated factories that produced weapons around the clock. "Look at this technical data," Juno said, his crystal form flickering as he processed the engineering reports. "They hollowed out their largest gas giant and filled it with fusion reactors. If detonated, it would create an explosion visible from neighboring star systems." Kiko found the human ultimatum that had been sent to all galactic forces. She read it aloud with disbelief. "To all alien forces in the Terra system. You have 72 standard hours to withdraw all ships beyond the edge of our solar system. If you do not comply, we will detonate our star and destroy everything within 3 light years, including your fleets." Surely this was just a threat to scare the galactic forces, Miko said hopefully. No species would actually destroy their own star system. But Nara's psychic reading of the archived data told a different story. As she touched the emotional imprints left in the files, her translucent form began to shake. "No," she whispered. "The psychological profiles are clear. The humans were completely serious. They would have actually done it." The files contained detailed analysis from the galaxy's best scientists and military strategists. They had studied human psychology, examined the technical plans, and confirmed that humans had both the ability and the absolute determination to carry out their threat. According to these reports, Juno processed slowly, human leaders had already given the order to begin the detonation sequence. They were not bluffing. They would have destroyed their entire species rather than allow themselves to be conquered. The Galactic Coalition's response was documented in painful detail. Military analysts calculated that victory against the humans would cost them 3 entire galactic fleets and millions of personnel. Even worse, the explosion would make several nearby star systems uninhabitable for thousands of years. Admiral Zektai, the supreme commander of the coalition forces, had written a report that chilled the students to their cores. Victory against Terra would be tactically indistinguishable from total defeat. These beings have weaponized their own extinction. The cost of defeating them would cripple our civilization for generations. The files showed that representatives from 12 different galactic powers had held an emergency meeting. For the first time in recorded history, they had voted unanimously to withdraw from a war they were winning. They were afraid, Nara said, her psychic abilities picking up the terror that still lingered in the archived emotions. Not afraid of losing the war but afraid of winning it. The humans had made victory more costly than defeat. The students found psychological evaluations that tried to understand how an entire species could be willing to commit suicide rather than surrender. One xenopsychologist had written, "Humans appear to possess a collective death wish coupled with an absolute refusal to accept domination. This combination makes them the most dangerous species we have ever encountered." "Look at this final report," Kiko said, pointing to a document marked with the seal of the Galactic High Council. "It recommends permanent quarantine protocols for the human system. Not because the humans are aggressive, but because they are completely unpredictable." The report concluded that humans would rather die than live under someone else's control. This made them impossible to negotiate with and impossible to defeat without unacceptable losses. Miko swam back from the files, her aquatic form trembling. So the Galactic Coalition simply left? More than that, Juno processed. They agreed to never return to human space. Ever. The humans had turned their willingness to die into the ultimate weapon. The students realized they had discovered the galaxy's most terrible secret. Humans had not been defeated or conquered. They had been left alone because they were too dangerous to fight, even when they could be easily beaten. They had weaponized their own extinction and made victory against them impossible. The final section of the Forbidden Archives contained files that were updated regularly, showing that the human situation was not just ancient history. These files glowed with a different color, bright blue instead of the red of historical records. As the 4 students accessed them, they realized they were looking at current intelligence reports. "The quarantine is not what we thought it was," Kiko said slowly, her compound eyes processing data that made no sense. "They are not keeping the humans locked in their system to protect us from them. They are hiding us from the humans completely." Miko's aquatic form trembled in her suit as she read the technical specifications. According to these files, every major galactic power has been working together for 800 years to maintain a massive cloaking field around the entire Terra system. The humans do not know that galactic civilization exists. The cost of maintaining this deception was staggering. The files showed that nearly 30% of the galaxy's total energy production was dedicated to keeping Earth hidden from the rest of the universe. Advanced technology that could have been used for exploration, medicine, or improving life for billions of beings was instead used to make sure humans never looked up and saw the stars filled with other civilizations. But why spend so much just to hide from them? Nara asked, her psychic form shimmering with confusion. Juno accessed the current surveillance reports and his crystal body began to dim with fear. Because they have not stopped advancing. Look at these intelligence updates. In the 800 years since the quarantine began, humans have developed artificial intelligence that rivals our best computers. They have learned to change their own genetic code. They are beginning to understand quantum physics in ways that some galactic species have not mastered. The most frightening report showed human progress toward faster-than-light travel. Their scientists were working on theories that could allow them to travel between stars within the next few decades. If they achieve interstellar flight while believing they are alone in the universe, Miko said quietly, they will explore space thinking that everything they find belongs to them by right of discovery. Nara used her psychic abilities to read the emotional content of the strategic planning files. The fear in these current reports is even stronger than in the historical ones. Our leaders are terrified of what will happen when humans reach the stars. The archives contained hundreds of war game simulations that galactic strategists had run over the centuries. Every single scenario ended the same way. If humans discovered galactic civilization, they would either see it as a threat to be destroyed or as territory to be conquered. Their expansion patterns showed no consideration for existing borders or the rights of other species. Look at this psychological analysis, Kiko said, reading from a recent file. Human entertainment shows that they call science fiction reveal how they think about meeting alien species. In most of their stories, aliens are either enemies to be defeated or primitives to be controlled. They rarely imagine aliens as equals. The students discovered something even more disturbing in the most recent files. For 800 galactic cycles, every major war between galactic powers had been fought with one secret rule: never give humans a reason to look beyond their solar system. This changes everything we learned about galactic history, Juno processed with growing horror. The War of the Seven Suns, the Collective Uprising, the Crystal Rebellion, all of these conflicts were limited in scope to make sure they did not create energy signatures that humans might detect. The various galactic species maintained peace not because they had learned to live together, but because they were all afraid of what would happen if their conflicts attracted human attention. Their shared terror of humanity had created the most stable period in galactic history. Miko read from a file marked Current Threat Assessment. If humans join galactic civilization as an advanced species rather than a primitive one to be guided, they will likely attempt to claim dominance over existing power structures. Their psychology shows no inclination toward cooperation with equals. As the 4 students absorbed this information, alarms began sounding throughout the archive facility. Their personal communicators started shrieking with emergency alerts that made their blood run cold. Priority alert: Terran Deep Space Probe Voyager 7 detected approaching galactic perimeter. All species prepare for potential first contact protocols. The students looked at each other in shock. Through the archive's viewing portal, they could see emergency lights flashing across the entire academy. Military personnel were running through the corridors, and emergency broadcasts were being transmitted to every corner of galactic space. Do we tell someone what we have learned? Kiko asked, but her voice showed she already knew the answer. Who would believe us? Nara replied. And even if they did, what could anyone do? The humans are already at our borders. Juno processed the implications of the emergency alert. For 800 years, our people have successfully hidden galactic civilization from humanity. But now the humans have reached out to touch the edge of our space. They are no longer a primitive species that can be easily managed. They are coming as equals. The 4 students realized they now possessed the galaxy's most dangerous secret at the exact moment when that secret was about to be revealed to everyone. Outside their hidden archive, an 800-year-old policy of containment was about to be tested. In the distance, emergency broadcasts announced that contact with the human probe was expected within 6 galactic standard cycles. Humanity was coming, and this time, there would be no hiding from them. The galaxy was about to meet its greatest fear.